Hello out there to my Facebook friends, clients, and the like, and to my viewers and those that follow me. I'm Jonathan Bengal, the host of Naked Tax Talk, where we get naked and bear down to the truth about our tax lives. And we do this by openly talking about our personal lives, our business lives, and of course, our financial lives. So today I'm flying solo yet again, but I am wearing my portable COVID mask. I'm just going to share this so I can just wrap it up. And I found out that I read somewhere that you could take a coffee filter and you can kind of put it in here and then you wrap it around and then you've got yourself a mask. I think it's kind of a cool fashion like statement. So that's why I'm wearing it, because I think it's pretty cool that it's like rah. So needless to say, I mentioned that I wanted to talk today about the Camino de Santiago. And the reason why I want to talk about it is because it is the Camino. It's a journey that you start out in southern France out of Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port. You start out in southern France and you walk the entire you cross over the Pyrenees into Spain, where then you traverse the entire northern part of Spain until you finally end in a city called Santiago, where the remains of St. James are said to have been buried. And from there, you continue on to the East Coast, where tradition has it that you burn your clothes. This journey and I it was quite contemptuous, but being on this journey is what I really fundamentally believed became the catalyst to who I am today and how I show up in this world. Before I go on, though, I want to let everybody know that this is an interactive broadcast. So if you do have questions or comments, I do look often, and I do compliment that too, and I do comment back, and I also will respond back. Now, here's the thing. Before I go on, though, I also want to mention that I am super duper excited that we are finally ready to launch my book called The ABCs of Deductions. It's going to come out officially. It's get launched in June. I believe it's the 26th. It's going to be available to the public where you can purchase it. It's a small, what they call a pocket book that I created. And I created it because I realized that many taxpayers struggle with the concept of what is a deduction or what is a write-off. And I wanted to give everyone a simple tool that they can refer to so they can maximize their tax savings. Now, here's the thing. The book is written very simply, and it's done on purpose, and it goes through the letters so that people can ultimately be able to carry this around and go, could I deduct that as an expense? And they can then open it up and go back to my examples and maybe apply it to their own lives. So I'm super excited. So that's officially coming out. I believe it's June 26th. June 26th. It's a month away, and I'm so super excited. So first of all, if you would like to be part of the book and get access to it when it officially comes out, make sure that you text me 555-888 to let's get, well, you can go there too, let's get naked. But actually it's 555-888 to under the cover. And you are going to get access to the pocketbook when it comes out. You'll have access to go and get it. Like I said, I'm super, super excited. I had this idea. It came to me actually, almost a year ago when I started entering the world of marketing in the sense of how to market myself to others as a badass tax consultant. And I just realized that taxpayers really needed this. So again, if you'd like to get access to this, 555-888 to under the cover. I have been told today that my entire marketing team that's behind it, the graphics, the bot that you're going to interact with, everybody is helping me to get this out there. By the way, when you text 555-888, you're going to meet CensorBot. And if you've not met CensorBot, you've got to meet this guy. So first of all, he's like me. He shows up practically naked. And he will guide you through the spa experience where you're going to be able to discover your tax personality type, because it turns out there are types of people as it relates to taxes. And then from there, you'll be given the opportunity to get onto the list so that you can get the book. But you'll be introduced to CensorBot. So back to where I was. So in 2003, I had come home from work. And at that time, 2013, that's what I said. Yes. Yes. I'd come home from work. I was a teacher at that time. I was teaching English to both seventh graders, ninth graders, and 12th graders. And my husband had said to me, "Do you want to go on this trip? And let's go out." And I said, "Well, what trip?" And he goes, "Well, first you got to watch this movie." And he showed me the movie called The Way. And it was about a man who is tracing his son's, basically, I think it's his ashes, and he's going to deliver them to a space. And, it was very, very much done very well, actually. And lo and behold, it's a true thing that you can actually do. You can actually walk the Camino de Santiago, as I said earlier in my introduction that I swayed off of. You can start in southern France, in the northern region of the Pyrenees, and on the west coast of France, in the southern town called Saint-Jean-Pierre-de-Port. And luckily for me, my French family, so shout out to ma famille française, ils habitaient à côté de ça, they live very close to there. We were able to go to them, and then they just dropped us off at the starting point at Saint-Jean. And Saint-Jean there is an old medieval town with bridges that go back to the medieval ages. And in fact, when I was there, I took pictures of these real cobblestones that you can see here that are the road itself. It's from the medieval times. It was built by people in this town of Saint-Jean. And there, of course, is where you will climb up into the mountainous areas. And eventually you stay in a place called an albergue, or in French is auberge. And what it is, if you can imagine, it's a room that is essentially full of just bunk beds. And I unfortunately don't have any pictures of that yet, but it's a room that's full of bunk beds. And that's all it is, just a mattress. And as you can see here, here's a picture of a pilgrim that I took that is basically carrying their gear with them. And yes, it is a hike. You carry all your gear with you when you walk. We walked 900 kilometers or 560 miles over 35 days, back to back, nonstop. We just kept going. And then, of course, we would relax in the evenings and so forth. So day one, we start out, we're crossing this it's actually a bridge there. By the way, this is a shout out to ma famille française. C'est mon père français et ma mère française. That's Yves and that's Lisette. And they are my French parents. One of my stories one of my background is that I actually won a full paid scholarship in 1997 to go to France. And at that time, my French was as good as bonjour and je m'appelle Jonathan. And when I left, after spending an entire summer there in southern France and becoming essentially a French brother to them, an American brother to them, I would quickly assimilate and pick up my French. And that's ultimately c'est la raison que je parle français. So that's why I actually speak French. So that's my French parents there. They're dropping us off at the very beginning. Here's of course, a river that has run since ancient times. And you walk through this amazing, beautiful passageway. There's my husband there in the green shirt and wearing his backpack. And he's looking back at me. And by the way, for the record, he hates his picture taken. And so he, of course, is taking a gander there and looking back at me. And this is going to begin the journey of a lifetime. And quite honestly, when we started on this journey, I was doing exactly this. You'll see plenty more pictures where I was taking pictures of myself as we journeyed through. And I truly, honestly started as what I would call a tourist, in the sense that it was about watching and looking at the castles. And I had ideas that we'd be looking at cathedrals and that we would just be truly a tourist. I had packed, by the way, when you take this journey and you go on this journey, you bring with you everything with you. So I had packed 5 pairs of pants, 3 pairs of shorts, 2 sweaters, 5 shirts, soap, because we learned that they don't provide these toiletries. You got to bring your own toiletries. And so we brought all of this and packed it into our bags. Oh, and our sleeping bags. I also had invested in a bug sheet protection thing for the bed bugs and everything else. And you bring it all with you on your back and you carry it, including the water, by the way, that you're actually going to end up getting throughout the journey from these fountains that you're seeing here on the picture. Throughout the journey, they show up everywhere. It's spring water or it's municipal water, and you basically fill up your water and, of course, carry it with you. When I started this journey, it reminds me a lot about entrepreneurship in the sense that to be an entrepreneur means that you're willing to take a risk. You're willing to go on a journey that is going to change your life. And that is exactly what we set out to do. And that's what I've done as a business owner is taking the risk. And so when you fill up this water, you walk and you carry this with you. So that first night, what you end up doing is you stay in something called an auberge. Again, it's a place that you can rest. By the way, I also want to mention that the Camino de Santiago is represented by a symbol that is I believe it's a seashell, and it's painted yellow with the blue square. And when you're walking, and you're walking sometimes 15 miles a day, 20 miles a day, sometimes as little as 6 miles a day, but you're also climbing a mile up in elevation, or a few kilometers up in elevation. You're watching for the symbol because luckily people have placed these symbols for you to see where you're headed, to where to go. And so it becomes the symbol. And it also tells everybody as you're walking that you are a pilgrim walking on this amazing journey. And so, of course, that's my husband in front of me. And this is the citadel here in Saint Jean. It has an entire citadel that protected the city. And of course, naturally, you want to get out there and you want to explore. The housing colors, this is interesting. So a little bit of French history is the colors of these houses you're looking at is actually known as the Basque region. So it's a region that it overflows into France, southern France and northern Spain. And it's delineated by, the distinction is the way they make their homes. And it's the white covering with the brick outline on the side there, and then the lower base of the brick. So this is very much a southern France, a Pyrenees, the Basque region. This is definitely their look. So anyway, so this is looking down at this ancient road. We have now checked in to the place that you actually are going to get a passport, and they stamp it. And so the requirement is that in order to be recorded at the church, now again, this is all news to me. I had no idea. When my husband showed me the movie, I thought that it was going to be this easy trek across Spain, like a walk in Manhattan Park. And we got there, and you check in, and they give you a passport. And each time that you check into an auberge or into a cathedral or something of that nature, they stamp the passport. When you end the trip, you give it to the church officials, who then translate your journey into Latin. They translate your name into Latin, and then they officially record you into the church's records. So you need this to prove that you've walked this journey. So nonetheless, to say this is day one, and we are again looking at this ancient medieval clock. It gives you an idea. By the way, this was towards the evening. I believe it was around 6 or 7 p.m. It's Europe, so of course the sun sets a little bit later. Again, we're making our way up the citadel, and we're overlooking the Pyrenees. So actually, in this view, you are looking at the Pyrenees. And what is going to happen is we're going to find ourselves walking up and over and through those mountains. It's going to take an 8-hour journey. It's going to take a lot of crazy notions of where are we going, what are we doing. So this is a great visual here, what's happening. Ancient walls, and again, now this is the citadel, again looking out into the future of what's coming. And at that time, I did not realize that this particular photograph would represent what it is like to be somebody who is in the moment looking out at the future. And like many of us, when we look at the future, we forget what is possible or what can be possible, or better yet, another one is we come up with this thing called fear. And we have no idea what's across those mountains, what's up through those mountains. And it isn't until we began to build up the confidence and the courage to walk, which is what we had to do. We had no choice. Eventually, you will find yourself in the midst of those mountains. And in a minute, I'll show you some photographs where it doesn't even look like that anymore. And it's just like real life of, I don't know what to expect. I don't know where I'm going. I'm just going forward. And that's like many of us. We have a general idea of where we're headed, but we don't actually have a plan. And interestingly enough, when it comes to taxes, this is true as well. We often forget that we need a plan to help to put us into motion. Now, luckily for me, my husband, he's a big, huge planner. He's all about planning out everything. And so every single day of our journey, he always plotted how far we were going to walk and ultimately what pathway we were going to take, and then ultimately what albergue that he ultimately wanted to stay in. So we are actually now descending. There's my husband again, and there is later to be known as Saint Eva. And Saint Eva becomes Saint Eva after a fun and exciting journey that maybe in the next broadcast I will get to. We're all looking at where we're headed, going. This was a gentleman, he was from Poland and ended up having pizza with us, as a matter of fact, that evening. And again, this is a citadel, which has now been turned into a church, a school. So imagine that. This is pretty cool, right? This is gorgeous. Southern France. I know this region very well. I go there every other year or so, and I always reconnect with my French family. So for me, it's just another beautiful opportunity to see this. And by the way, if you wanted to see my photographs even more, you could just find yourselves going to my YouTube channel. I mean, my Facebook page, and yeah, and looking at my photographs. So here we're talking about the Refuge pour Pèlerins de Saint-Jacques de Compostelle. So again, it's a place you can go and find refuge and find a place to sleep. So there we are. And now the day has come. It is about 7 in the morning. It is required on the Camino, unless you're staying in private places, but otherwise you're staying in these albergues. And most are run by monks or nuns, and they usually kick you out at 7 a.m. That's like the deadline to get out. And there we are. We're beginning to walk. And I'll never forget this moment, because as we began to walk, I looked back at my husband and I said, "Are you sure this is what we're supposed to do?" And he, of course, because he loves to talk to me, likes to be a little bit, he likes to josh me. And so he's like, "Just turn around, just keep on walking." And so we kept on walking, and eventually we would get to this part in the road where it really splits into a two-way lane. It splits into two. It's a fork in the road. At that time, I remember thinking to myself, this is kind of like real life. You walk forward all the time. And in your life, you're always presented with two options. I could go this way or I could go that way. And we still don't know what is the potential or what is the possibility of what lies behind taking either direction. And the day before, we were actually told by the place that you check in to get your postcard, your passport for walking, that we were to not go left. In fact, we were to go right. Well, we would come to the fork in the road, and like in every decision in every life, we had to make a decision to make. And so my husband and I had decided, split second, that we would go to the left and not to the right. We would end up taking one of the most difficult paths up and over the Pyrenees, down into the next city of Roncesvalles, or in French as Roncesvalles. We would cross over. Now, the cool thing about this journey is that we would find ourselves walking, seeing the glorious views of the clouds, because we're climbing, I think it's 2 kilometers in altitude in one day. I think it's equivalent to about a mile in altitude is what we climb. And we get there. And of course, what we don't realize, and what we would later find out, is that someone had actually perished and had fallen off the cliff to the side. And if you can see in this picture here, there's not much wiggle room here to see anything. In fact, it's pretty much all fog. And to give you an idea, this is what we walked through for 8 hours. For 8 hours of our journey, essentially was this fog. And you can see that you can't actually see past. You can't see past the end of your nose at all, really. And in fact, if I back up, this is my favorite picture. This is a picture of my husband. He's in front of me, and we're walking. And to the side there, past this gateway, is actually a drop off of the cliff. And of course, you can't see that through the fog. This is the fog of what I would later coin as the fog of ignorance. And so because it is the fog of ignorance, I thought to myself, my goodness, it's like real life. You cannot see anything past what you are not aware of. And I like to say that when you cannot see that, this is when we don't have the freedom of choice, is when we don't have awareness. And it's just like this fog that fogs up everything around us, and we can't see past it. And it isn't until we begin to move forward through the fog, or we come across situations, we come across people that give us insight, that bring to us awareness, then only then, I personally believe, that is when we become what we call aware. And now we have the freedom of choice to either go left or to go right. And ultimately, this is what happens in your tax life as well. You see, as business owners, we spend our entire journey essentially just kind of just doing the thing that we do every day, which is to get up, go to work, make money, have a few write-offs, a few deductions. But we ultimately are afraid of the cliff, like in this photograph, that actually is at the side. But we don't know it's there. And just like in tax life and in real life, in tax life, at the end of the year when we go to file those tax returns, we are surprised often more than not by these high tax bills that come our way. It's equivalent to falling off this cliff that unfortunately someone had did the day before. This fog represents to me the ignorance that every single one of us goes through. And again, it isn't until we become aware. And now we have a choice to make. And so when someone like me or like a tax planner or a tax consultant like us comes into your life and we bring awareness to you and say, did you know that you could actually deduct X, Y, and Z? It's now an awareness. And through awareness now, we can develop mindfulness, which allows us to each time remember the circumstances under which we can deduct items from our taxes. Or in this case, the awareness after the fact that someone died and realizing how risky it was to have actually taken this pathway. But I'll tell you, it was ultimately the most rewarding journey ever. In this photograph here, by the way, we're going to end up walking through those cows. We're walking right next door to them. Again, completely ignorant that there is a cliff that you can fall off this mountain. And so here we are again, we're walking through them, and we will come across the first refuge called Horizon. And you can, in fact, stay there. Too short of a journey for us, so we just kept hiking. By the way, the temperature was about, I think it was in the 50s. And believe it or not, we were actually very warm utilizing these jackets. We still own them. Super light. They weigh less than an ounce. You can scrunch them all the way up, and you can actually put them in your pocket. And of course, they fold out into this beautiful jacket, and they actually keeps you very warm. So again, more cows. And there I am, another photograph. And we finally make it to the top of the Pyrenees. And my husband and I, we were able to take a breath and take in the views. And now again, we're just seeing more cows, the greenery, and my husband always in the front of me. We always pay homage to the saints. And even though I'm not a Catholic, I ultimately understand and respect that every single God and demigod and saint and Buddhas and everything else, they all appear to us at the right time when we need them the most in our lives. And perhaps you could say that here is a statue of Saint Mary, of Mother Mary, looking over us. And in many ways, it's offering her protection over us. And I accept that. And so again, we kind of were able to sit here and really truly enjoy the views. You can see the road. This is actually a road that people actually can drive on. That is not going to always be the case. And that was the thing about the Camino, is sometimes the roads were beautifully paved like this, and other times they were rough and just full of mud. And I think I have some photographs. Again, a reminder that even in real life, there are roads that are easily paved that you can take, and there are roads that are not, that are just like the mud piles that we found ourselves. So here's a vision. Here's another visual of me wearing my sweaters, my pants. By the way, we did invest in high-end walking shoes. Those shoes were actually rated for 500 miles. By the time we were done with this trip, those shoes would have holes in them at the soles, like literally the shoes like worn out at the bottom. But they did live up to their 500-mile mark. They really did. That sweater right there, I would ultimately let it go. And I'll explain that a little bit later. Anyway, so there's Blaine. Here we are. And again, another gorgeous view of the mountaintops of the Pyrenees, the sheep that just roam freely, the cows that roam freely. And again, unfortunately, what we cannot see because of the clouds is the valley that's beneath us. And it's this gorgeous, gorgeous view. And I got a glimpse of it when we walked through the mountains of the Galicia, which is the last state that you enter in. And we actually got to see what we would have potentially have saw here in the Pyrenees. Now, again, I go back every other year and I'm able to really enjoy the view of the Pyrenees looking down because my French sister Leticia, she always takes me there as something, again, I just love. You can see, actually, I'm not that happy in this picture. I'm actually truly suffering in the sense that I'm like, oh my God, please no more, please no more. And the reason is, in a minute, let's see if I can show you guys. Yes, I'm trying to take a photograph here, but you can actually see that the mountain, the incline of the mountain is so steep um, that the trees are actually growing out at an angle. So they're actually growing and then they're going like this. And I wanted to capture how steep these inclines were and declines. And as I mentioned earlier, here's the road. So again, not that all roads were beautifully paved and very easy to walk on. They were, in fact, oftentimes very muddy, and your shoes would hit this and sink into that mud. And as you pulled it out, all the weight of the mud would be pulled with you. And it's in this moment that I see two things come to my mind. And the first one is that I see that the symbolism of the mud trapping onto your shoe as you dipped into this muddy road and then lifted it up again and then put your next foot in to sink more into this mud and then lift it up again. To me, what that mud symbolized is the negative shit that we can sometimes find ourselves holding on to. You know, when people do us wrong, or, well, I like that phrase, doing us wrong, when things don't go the way we expect them to go, AKA expectations, when we're attached to stuff. It's being attached. And when things don't work out for us, we develop this mind of anger. And so that mud represented to me every single time that we allow ourselves to carry this mud. And sometimes you have to walk through the mud so that you can get to the nice pavement. And sometimes you got to just keep doing it. But I also know what that taught me is that the mud eventually comes off. Just like in real life, when people do shit things to us or we do other things to other people, it eventually passes. Now, what was something really fascinating too, and I don't know if I have a picture of this, is there's a moment in which we're all getting stuck in this mud, like we're legitimately getting stuck. And random strangers are coming up to other people, us included, and helping us out, like lifting us out of the mud. And we were doing it to other complete strangers too. We were lifting them out of the mud. And when I realized in that moment is something called kindness, that kindness really is when we decide that we're going to, in essence, rush over to someone else that we see that is suffering just like us, with carrying around the boots full of mud and helping them to pull them up step after step together, working as a team until eventually the mud is washed away. And now you're on this beautiful moment where you're able to walk on this gorgeous road. And you know what that reminded me of in my tax practice is that it is equivalent to the business and does business by themselves. They wake up one day and they say, I am done working for X, Y, and Z, and I'm going to go create my own destiny, my own future. And they head out and they do it. And they walk in the path of entrepreneurship. And along the way, they find nice, easy paths. And they also find muddy, crapped out roads. And more often than not, that's where we find ourselves, is in those roads. And we're having to, as business owners, lift our legs up and keep carrying around this mud. And what I realize is in proactive tax planning, what we do is we're like the strangers that came up to me and to my husband and helped to lift us up so that we could continue walking forward. And that's what we do as proactive tax planners as well. We come to the aid of our entrepreneurs. I see the suffering of where they were before they even understood what a write-off was or what a deduction or even shifting income or shifting expenses or creating the right entity to maximize the taxes in the sense of maximizing the tax savings. So I could see that. And this is what the Camino would ultimately create for me, is the reality that every single one of us is carrying around mud. And as entrepreneurs, especially as entrepreneurs, we're carrying around the mud of tax. And I and many others of my colleagues, our responsibility is to help them, to lift them up out of the kindness of our heart and to help to remove that mud from their shoes. Because at the end of the day, we're all headed in the same direction. We're all headed in the same path in this life. Every single one of us is going to experience death. Every single one of us is going to experience someone calling us names. Every one of us is going to experience what it is like to make something and have it taken away. This is part of our human experience. But at the end of the day, we ultimately have two choices to make. We can either ignore all of the mud and seeing everybody around us tumbling and struggling to lift their shoes full of mud, or we can take the time to say, how can I become a benefit to them, to help them through their struggles? And let's be honest, by doing this, it actually helps feed our soul. It actually feeds who we are as people. It allows us to grow just as much as them. So this part of the journey is really special to me because this is the beginning in which I began to realize the importance of our human existence. There's another photograph that I took because I was truly blown away by the fact that we were so high in altitude and the clouds were completely blocking everything out. And as I said earlier, it represented to me essentially ignorance in our human existence. So apparently, I'm going to go ahead and remove that channel. So I'm doing something here. I just realized, and I think I'm going to add my JB Financial page to this. So, by the way, I just got distracted. But okay, so this photograph. Let me show you this photograph. This is probably my favorite photograph that I can share with you guys. This is a picture. It's one of my many favorite photographs, but this is a picture of my husband walking on that same muddy road. Now, I would later learn that this road is the same road that Napoleon took his soldiers across in the 1800s to walk into Spain and basically have a battle. And he walks his troops over the same exact pathway that we are walking on right now. And those leaves, that's actually the leaves that's a bed of leaves that are on this road, leaves that have fallen. And when you actually walk on them, it feels like you're walking on a sponge. It actually feels very soft. It's very light. And I remember when I hit that particular moment, thinking to myself, man, that is like everything that we want. We have this mud that we carry around. We have this torture that we carry around. We have all this bullshit that we carry around. And sometimes you get a little bit of a reprieve. And in this case, the reprieve is this gorgeous, gorgeous view of my husband walking right there, walking on these leaves. And we're just feeling the beautiful feeling of not even an impact as you're walking along this Camino. Hi, Mom. Nice to see you. So you get to walk this pathway. If you also notice in this photograph, I also tried to capture the steepness of the path because you can see the tree trunks beginning to kind of come at an angle and then they go up. But this here is a real precious moment for me. Again, another view of looking out and seeing the valley beneath us. And again, not really able to see that in the very beginning of this trip. And let me see if I can get this thing to. Let me see if I can make this thing a little bit better. Does that make it better? No. Let me see. I gotta maybe come down. That's like so. Like, how come this doesn't work? I don't know. I'm just doing this live, nice and unedited, as they say. Okay. So again, we're continuing on this journey. We're at the very top, by the way, of the Pyrenees. We have not yet descended into Spain quite just yet. And you can see my husband. He's there standing, waiting for me as usual. And so in front of him actually are two women that we actually did not meet on this trek of the journey, but we would meet them a couple days later and they would become our saints. And I'll get to that in a minute. But yes, so here we are waiting. Here is my husband. Again, we noticed that there's snow on the caps of these mountains. There's still snow up here. And by the way, this is in June of 2013. And June, July. Yeah, it was in June of 2013. And there's snow on the caps. And my husband and I, we were like completely blown away with the snow. And if we're from Phoenix, Arizona, it's where we live right now. Snow is like you only get it when you go to like the mountains somewhere else out of town, and so you don't see snow every day. And there was the snow waiting for us to come and to connect with it. And again, just more views of just walking. And there we are, we're approaching some snow. And we're so excited because now we're going to be able to actually touch the snow. I'm going to actually be able to play with the snow. Yeah, it was just gorgeous. There we are, just playing around with it in awe that you have this snow in the month of June on top of the Pyrenees in southern France. And we still have not descended into Spain just yet. We're still in France. So, of course, we got to get our picture taken. And again, just some more snow photographs. There I am, happy. And again, more photographs. Now, if you remember earlier in the show, I mentioned that our backpacks, they have a symbol of the Camino. It's blue and yellow. And if you notice, I took a picture of the signage because, again, you'll see this throughout my photographs. I take pictures of the symbolism of the Camino. And again, I wanted to capture the reality that we're on top of a mountain and it's way out there somewhere else. And in a minute, we'll see the past. There I am, pointing to the future, always optimistic. I love this picture. It's Blaine standing on top of the mountains, and he's enjoying it. I don't know why I'm getting emotional. I'm actually getting emotional. Actually, now I know why. You know, the Camino, it really represents our life's journey. And it really represents what beginning of life is like. And in real life, just like when you're born, you have no idea what you're going to say or how you're going to speak. You have no idea. You can't even make out the language. And even though I speak a little bit of Spanish, well, yo hablo español también, pero no más con mi familia es todo, pero yo hablo español también. But when you're in Spain, there's an intimidation factor as well, and also the French and everything else. And so the Camino represents the simplicity of human existence. It represents the simple life, which is you move and you're always moving forward. And it's also true of our own personal existence, our own personal life. We are always moving forward, never staying in the past, never allowing ourselves to dwell on the what ifs and the what should have beens, and instead moving into the future of what is possible and what it can be, and not being afraid. And again, when it comes to tax life, this is also true because this is going to represent for me ultimately what's going to happen in my own personal tax practice, which is constantly struggling to break through and make my own name as a teacher at the time, full time, and making an impact that I wanted to make with my students. This is the symbolism of our human existence. And so I got a little emotional because it kind of reminds me, it brought me back to that moment of taking that photograph. We're at almost the very top here before we began to descend and to cross into Spain. And I will tell you that the journey in the very beginning was tough. In fact, it was difficult a lot of the times. I have some photographs that I'm going to show where my legs have ballooned up. My ankles are the size of about a tomato. They're huge. And my kneecaps have swollen up really massively as well. And again, it's just a symbolism of it is a reality and a symbolism of how real human life is. So now we're beginning to see the city of Roncesvalles, which is beneath us. We're going to start making our descent. And it's going to take us about 3 hours or more to actually start descending to the bottom here. And we are going to fall on our butts because, again, the descent is really steep. We're going to see other people tumbling and falling with their backpacks. We're going to see this magnificent journey that we're coming to the reality of, oh my gosh, what in the hell did my husband get me into? And so there he is again. He's walking through the switches on the pathway. So again, the Camino, although you're going to have amazing paved pathways, you're going to have some muddy pathways, you're also going to experience tiny little treks, just like what you see here as you begin to traverse the mountainsides, and we're descending. And again, we have no idea where we're really going. We just know we're heading down. And here's the picture that I think really captures how steep that we were having to descend as we made our way down down the mountain. You can really see the trunks as they grow out from the side, and then they grow upwards. Um, Mom, the as far as if we're ever going again, listen, I met people on this Camino that had already done it once or twice over, and I thought they were crazy fools for doing it. Quite honestly, I don't know if I would do it again per se, because it was hard. What I will say though is if I did do it again, I would do it what we would later coin the people we would coin people on the Camino as the royals, and that will come later on. But if I forget, remind me. But we called them the royals. I'll just tell you right now. So essentially, what happens is if you noticed in some of the pictures, we're carrying all of our gear. We're carrying everything with us, and we're talking about 25, 30 pounds on our back, including the weight of our shoes and our clothing and everything, and our bodies, right? So you're carrying all this weight with you. And what we did not know is that you could actually pay to have people ship your bags to the next destination joint. And so you could just walk with a fanny pack, and that's what we kept seeing. And we would later coin these people as the royals, and that would actually catch fire, and it would spread throughout the Camino that there were people that were cheating the system. They were shipping their bags, and they were taking very limited space to sleep in because they would get there way faster than you because they didn't have to rest like we did to take in food and water and catch our breath, and because it was taxing. And people will ask, well, did you prepare for this? And quite honestly, we didn't. We had no preparation. We just did it. And the truth is that the Camino had all walks of life. The youngest person that we know that we actually met, I'll show more pictures down the road. His name was Joseph. He was only 11 years old, walking with his mom. And I met one of the older people walking on the Camino, and he was 79, and he was walking backwards. He was walking from the Camino de Santiago back to Paris, where he would later, of course, give me advice on how to walk the Camino. So there we are. We're all carrying our backpacks. We have our bed gear with us. You can see the bedding. We've got, again, our hiking sticks. We're just walking, and we're going. We're moving. And there I am. And again, we're looking at the trees, and they're so beautiful. They're just so beautiful. And they're so tall. Like the photograph doesn't even do it justice because they're just so tall. And again, we're headed into finally this place called Roncevaux, or in Spanish, Roncesvalles. And that's actually a monastery. I don't remember what year it goes back to, but it is a medieval monastery. And the monasteries have basically opened up these areas in which you can sleep in. They don't provide anything, just the bed. And of course, a place to take a shower, which you ultimately are doing in a community setting. Use the restroom and kind of refresh. And then you can we didn't have the energy, but you could actually walk from there into like the center and get food and stuff, but we didn't have it. So this Roncesvalles is a great stopping point for today, and I'll continue this journey because it's from here that the journey begins to get better and worse all at the same time. It is at this moment that when we walk in, I took this picture. By the way, we're walking in from the back end of it, which would be my story, this whole journey. I kept walking into the back end, and jokingly, you could say that in real life. And so here's the back of the monastery. And again, we're walking, continuing. Oh, I didn't take a picture? What? There we are. So when we walk into this monastery, into the albergue, it's this moment when I take this photograph of our shoes, which are right here. A symbolism of we have arrived. And so we put our shoes there, and all of the other walkers, every other pilgrim who's here takes off their shoes. It's what you have to do in order to go into these places, most places. And again, they've been rinsed off. They've made it through the mud and everything. It's this moment that we realized, holy shit, we just crossed the Pyrenees into Spain. And what in the world is coming for us next? So next Wednesday, I will introduce us to our pals that we will meet, and a little bit of the culture behind walking the Camino, and in terms of how you build friendships and where it all starts. And in fact, we've been asked this question before. If you went by yourself, would you find yourself walking by yourself? And the answer is no. It turns out that you can actually walk by your lonesome self if you wanted to, but you are guaranteed to meet a friend, and potentially a friend like we did, Saint Eva and Eleanor, the Duchess of Oxfordshire. We were able to walk with them and become their best friends. And again, we don't meet them until times later, which I will go into the next chapter. But stay tuned for next time when we walk through, when we walk to Zubiri, and in the process, we walk through the city of, when we walk to Pamplona. First it's Zubiri, then Pamplona, to the running of the bulls, and I'll share my experiences at that time. Also, one last call. Again, this Camino taught me everything about life, and it also taught me how important it is that we be proactive in our tax planning. If you would like to know how to save money, or perhaps maybe how you could take your business and have the government help to subsidize you on this journey, send me a text, 555-888-LET'S-GET-NAKED. Meet SensorBot, and he's going to introduce you to our virtual spa where you're going to be able to find out about your tax personality type. Because wouldn't it be nice to know what your tax personality is and as relates to your taxes, so you can have a little bit of an understanding. Maybe you'll show up naked just like me. Maybe you'll bring your own bathrobe. Maybe you prefer a fluffy bathrobe, or just maybe you prefer a utility bathrobe. And last but not least, I am so excited that I wrote this book, The ABCs of Deductions, An Entrepreneur's Guide to Write-Offs. And just like on the Camino, it starts out very simple, but the reality is it's very complex. And so I wrote this book for my fellow entrepreneurs so they could finally understand the basics of write-offs and deductions. And if you'd like to get your hands on the cover, if you'd like to get your hands on it, if you'd like to become part of my launch party, they say, or again, if you'd like to get first notice about all the updates when we finally get this thing out the door, which is coming up in June 26th, text 555-888, and the word is under the cover, all one word, under the cover, to 555-888, and you will be given the first opportunity to read a chapter of the book, and ultimately access to the book when it finally gets launched. And last but not least, again, if you would like to be a guest, which I usually interview people on Thursdays or Fridays, and if you would like to know more about how we can save you millions of dollars, like I did for one of my clients just recently, over $160,000, let's get naked at nakedtextalk.com. So again, tune in next week where we continue this journey into the town of Zubiri. Dum, bum, ba-dum, bum.